Hi everyone. Sorry we're late. Um, but fashionably late. It's just how we roll. Um, so my name is Ruby Gonzalez, and I wanted to share with you all a little bit about how my journey has transitioned me into who I am and how it's benefited me in so many ways. And in one area in particular, the higher self, the consciousness, awareness. My journey has led me into multiple areas in religion, in science, in all kinds of areas. You name it, I've kind of went down that alley. But what I found is when I went full circle, when I finally came back to the center part, what I went all the way around the world to look for, I had already had in here. But it's a matter of being aware, consciousness. And so it was never the religion, it was never any of those things. It was just finding my way back to myself. And the most important thing about this journey for me has been the inner self, knowing who you are. The importance of knowing who you are is because if you don't know who you are, how how do you function in the world? Are you functioning based on things that are told to you to believe, or is it something that is true for yourself? So it's important to know yourself. And I put together a little visual for everyone. One thing about this, I love this awesome life tip. It says to get to know yourself better. What's your personality type? Are you an introverted or extroverted? What brings you joy? What makes you stressed? And what relieves that stress? It's so important to know yourself best to start being your best friend. Besides, if you don't know this about you, no one else will. So this is true on multiple levels because when you interact with another person, you need to know where you start and they begin, where you're not approaching an individual and picking up just, okay, perfect example. You go to work, right? That's one version of us, right? At work, you're just like, oh, hi, how are you? Right? You kind of changed, your vibes changed a little bit when you're in a work environment versus when you're at home, when you're in school, when you're around your friends, when you're around your family even. You can tell that that part of you does change a little bit, even in the way that you talk. Your lingo can be different. Maybe you grew up speaking Spanish your whole life, but you speak English in your workplace. So again, all of those personality traits, they are all parts of you. And so understanding which parts of you in every area you're acting upon is extremely important, because then instead of just existing or just kind of flowing in life, you can actually become more aware of the things that you like in moments, the things that you don't like, and you can kind of choose. I mean, everything is energy, and you can kind of choose more or less what it is that you want to experience by knowing who you are. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is to know who you are. What do you like? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? So we get into knowing the self, but then we get into something a little bit more, as far as a little bit deeper. We need to have emotional intelligence, and that requires mindfulness. So that's the very first step. So mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to your thoughts, your physical sensations, and the environment around you without constantly feeling the need to judge what's happening to or to make it other than it is. Now, it is extremely important when you practice mindfulness to be present. That's what mindfulness is. It's removing everything from the outside of you, in your mind, all the chatter, just everything that's going on in life, and being present. Because this is where our most power comes from, is being in the present. It's not in the past, because it's already happened, and it's definitely not in the future, because we're human. It's not guaranteed, right? So the most important thing to remember in any moment, no matter how you choose, no matter the modality, is to be present. So mindfulness. What mindfulness brings forth is, being able to pay attention. And what that looks like is listening, watching, or considering what naturally exists. What is natural in your environment, like your children. It's like everybody has kids to fight. One would be like, that's not natural. It's so natural. If you've got kids, it's so natural. I think it would be unnatural if your children didn't fight. So you make an exception for something like that, right? It's a natural thing to happen in your environment. You can look at it as bad or good, doesn't really matter. It just is. And so what we go on to next is on purpose, when you choose to. So that's intentionally increasing awareness of experience. It's actually looking at what's happening around you. You know how they say you can go to the grocery store and If you're looking at your phone, you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. 9 times out of 10, you hear of these stories on the news, blah, 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 things go wrong, but it's usually because somebody's not paying attention. You hear people having car accidents. It's all about being present and aware of what's going on, not just with you, but around you. It's extremely important. And so, being present, of course, like I said, this is focusing on the here and now. And then a big part of my journey, and I think it's human nature to judge. I don't think that it's wrong to judge, because I think that's how we learn, that's how we discern. But, non-judgment, going into something with non-judgment, meaning being open to anything that may not be the norm for you, just expanding that opportunity to experience something new. So you release judgment. So, for example, one area in particular we like to talk a lot about, this comes up everywhere, is religion, right? Everybody's like, well, no, if you're not Catholic, I can't talk to you. If you're not Buddhist, I can't talk to you. That's judgment, right? So it's the same with race. It's the same with all labels. So non-judgment is what is needed in mindfulness. To be present in this moment without expecting anything, without needing to judge it, just being. So that's extremely important. When you can be present right here, right now, it leads you to this feeling. You get to emotional intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence is extremely important because it brings about everything. I mean, it's your self-awareness, right? You start with your self-awareness, but it also ties into your motivation, into your empathy, right? Empathy is that of seeing an individual, that feminine energy, right? If you see somebody down, well, you want to pick them up, right? That's empathy, having compassion. Your social skills, how you interact with people. I'm guilty of needing to practice more on that, but we all got something to work on. Self-regulation, being not only responsible for your actions, but moving forward with, what is the word I want to use? A decision, actually making decisions, right? Because some people get stuck and like, no, that's scary, right? I don't want to go and do that. It's too scary. But 9 times out of 10, those things that you're scared of are going to be the things that are going to expand you in ways that you're not capable of yet, right? That's evolution. You want to evolve. We come here to evolve. And so it's so important to understand emotional intelligence. Anger. There's so many different forms of anger, right? I can get angry because I'm not experiencing something that I want to experience, right? Versus I can get angry because my kid is making me mad, and that's a whole different kind of mad, right? So understanding how you respond to those different types of anger is extremely important, because you're going to get a sensation, you're going to get a feeling in your body, and you're going to feel it somewhere. It's significant to everybody, so don't feel like everybody is the same. Like when I get mad, it could be, I could get a gut feeling, right? Or angry, my stomach gets tight, right? That's when I'm like really, really mad, versus another sensation. But everybody is different. But here's the point. Emotional self-awareness is the key to making your mindfulness practice and knowing who you are very successful. It's broken down into 4 categories. Emotional intelligence is broken down by self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and then, of course, relationship management. So self-awareness, primary. I will push that to my dying days and then come back and push it again in the next life. Because if you don't know who you are, then you're living a life, and again, nothing's neither good or bad, but you can always come here, and when you know who you are, you're choosing. When you don't, you're existing, you're reacting in the world, right? So emotional self-awareness, and awareness itself is extremely important. So that's primary for me. Self-management, emotional self-control, right? Like me. My sister wanted to choke me on the way over here because I'm like, she's like, dude, slow it down, like calm down. You're gonna go and teach these people how to, keep it together, and you're flipping out on the way. We're human, but perfect example, right? Self-control. We're always on the journey. And so adaptability. So you adapt, right? There's that accepting what is. So you could either fight against it and be mad about it and put all that kind of energy into fighting what is inevitable, or you can adapt. And, being human, we do tend to just adapt to our environments, adapt to our situations in whichever way that is needed. But it's important if you can be aware of that you can not have resentment, right, towards it, because you're settling for something, and then instead of just settling for it, you can voice your opinion. And it may not be 100% go your way, but then there comes the opportunity for compromise. So, achievement orientation, goals. So, self-management, if you don't have goals, doesn't make you good or bad. Remember, I'm going to keep saying this. It's so important that everybody knows it. There's nothing either good or bad. There's just what is. And you are always divinely guided. You are perfect in your imperfection. Know this. But when you are goal-oriented, right, you have something to look forward to. You have something, this is the change, that everybody wants to, well, most people want to experience change. And little kids grow up and, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? That is, goal orientation, achievement. So that comes under self-management. Positive outlook. Positive outlook, I am very much in support of positive outlook. However, I do think it's extremely important that we consider both sides of every coin in every situation. Everything is not going to always be rainbows and butterflies. It's not supposed to. We live in a world of duality. And if you do not understand that there is a purpose for everything, then you're going to sit in a place of feeling like, well, I should have, and then you get a victim mentality, right? This is what comes from feeling like you're owed something. It is just a victim mentality, and that's why it's so important to kind of come to a place of understanding the good and the bad, both coins, and then finding your place in the middle, because that is a more stable, understanding approach. So social awareness, empathy. Having empathy for other people, for your family members, for anybody, the people that you interact with. It's important to be able to not only have empathy for others, but have empathy for yourself, most importantly. Organizational awareness. Now, that being in an environment. So you can kind of go into an environment and you can kind of sense if these are your people or not, right? It's important to know that. Because if you are running around with the wrong crowd or what is perceived as the wrong crowd, because you don't know your identity, you're just trying to find a place to fit in, this is where you would come into some problems, right? Because you don't have your own identity. You're basing the identity on what the world outside of you or other people or groups are telling you it should be. So this can both bring growth, but it can also be detrimental to our well-being. So relationship management, influence, coach and mentor, conflict management. My husband knows. Teamwork. Inspirational leadership. Now, inspirational as in, again, we get back to positive. You always want to encourage good, right? You want good for everybody, people you love, people in your life. Teamwork, I mean, it just works better, things flow. And at the end of the day, it's having compassion. Like, you can sum all of that up into having compassion. Oneness. Oneness is that of seeing the other person as you. When you tend to look at another person as you, your response to that person would most likely be different than if you just saw it as a random person or you were placing judgment before that person introduced himself. Oneness. So compassion comes underneath that. So of course, there's low emotional intelligence and there's high emotional intelligence. I highly encourage every single person to explore themselves in their fullness, sit quietly, ask yourself, what does anger feel like? What does sadness feel like? And the different levels. You don't have to go too deep. Some people be like, I just don't have that kind of time to sit there in my head and do all that. You don't have to go that deep. If you can just understand the basic ones, then you'll know the things that are triggering you and whether it's valid for what's happening in that moment or if it's something that, is how you're responding, where you're feeling something internally and acting it out and it's not really what's being, mirrored back to you. So that's emotional intelligence. Now, labels. All right. This is huge because we live in a society, in a world of labels. Before there were labels, we were all human beings. There was no separation, right? Evolution has brought forth labels by class, by race, by gender, by sex, by choice of relationship, by family breakdowns. I mean, you name it. We are labeled to the degree of we don't even understand all our labels, right? We label judging, we label many, many different ways. But if you can look at anything and everything that comes with a label and set it aside for just a minute, not to say that it's unrealistic, but how many of y'all can honestly say that the labels that are placed on you, if you really knew what they all were based on the outside, that they were even true, right? So for me, what I did with labels is I turned in and told myself in my journey, you know what? I'm going to remove all labels to just not have a need to identify anything by class, by sex. I don't see labels anymore. I don't see, when I look at a person, I look at a person's soul. That's how I see. Now, of course, that takes a little bit deeper of, meditation and removing yourself, whatnot. But the biggest part where that part of me came forth is when I removed the labels. When I understood what labels were. Labels are just names that are placed on things and people that aren't really accurate, if you're honest. Because how many people have been accused of being rude? How many ugly? I mean, you name it. We all have. We've all experienced it. And even the good labels. Like, let's not just name the bad. Let's label, oh my God, she's so beautiful, but I bet she's dumb as a board, right? You've heard those things. Or, you name it. Labels. If you can look at the world without needing to label it, then your chances of understanding it and being open to the individual or the experience is going to be a lot more impactful on you, because you're not looking at it from a perspective of what the world has already put on it, right? It's important to understand that. Again, there's no wrong or right way. It takes time. I mean, trust me, I've sat through that for a very long time, and it eventually grows on you like anything. It's a lifestyle change. So, next area is conditions. So, conditions are things that are placed upon all of us, mostly when we're growing up, right? You're raised to believe certain things. You're raised to believe that, if you don't work a certain way, that things won't turn out good for you, or girls shouldn't do this, boys shouldn't do that, and there's always like this story of why that is, right? So conditions are things placed upon us as children, and as we grow up, we carry those conditions with us. Now, that's neither good nor bad, because 9 times out of 10, this is just a repetitive conditioning that is passed down through generations. So, some labels, like for example, this lady here, she says, unless I am in control, I'm unhappy, right? So, but see, that's just a label. Why would she believe that? Because either she was raised to believe that control is needed, rather it be, when that light, like not many of y'all are old enough to know this, but when I was little, when that light outside turns on, you better get home, right? When you're playing outside, that light out there turns on, be home. That's a condition, right? Even if it's not good or bad, but it's a condition. So 9 times out of 10, people carry these things forward. People who are always happy annoy me. That's a condition. You see what I mean? It's just, it's judgment, but it's condition. So I'm too good for him. People who don't try new things are losers. That's an opinion, but it's also a condition. Remember, everything boils down to our childhood. And what's important in understanding conditions is these are all things that were placed on us, just like labels. So again, I get back to the importance of knowing self. When you know who you are, you're less likely to carry these labels and these conditions because it's not authentic. Now, I mean, here you experience a lot of kids these days. They're different from even my generation. I've noticed a huge difference in kids. They're more rebellious. They're more going against the grain. And for a long time, of course, I'm, fighting them like everybody else, fighting a good fight against your kids and whatnot. But what I've come to understand more now, because I'm empathic, I feel energy, I understand energy, I feel it. And so I'm claircognizant. I have a knowing. I don't know why I know, I just know, right? It's my strongest gift. We all have gifts, but that's my strongest gift. What I've learned is that the kids that have come in the late 90s, their energy has changed. So the conditions and the ways of what was before, the energy is so different in children that they're just rebellious. They grow up thinking, well, no, I don't need to be like that. You know, they're fighting against our ways of conditioning. And so, again, neither good nor bad, but understanding it from a perspective of energy, it's important to know that these kids are just built different. Their DNA is different. And what they're acting on is a sense of, you know, when we're kids, we have that imagination, we have that wonder, we have that excitement, we have that drive. Well, we usually kill that off at about 20, 22, right? Because it's real world time. But if you notice, the kids these days, they're carrying that on into their 20s, right? Well, that's because their souls are driven for more of the evolutionary experience this time around. Meaning they know that there's more, they just don't know how to get it. But it's also, what I also see on the other end of that is all these kids don't have identity. A lot of them don't. They don't know who they are. They base who they are on video games, on the people they hang out with, instead of identifying within themselves what's true for them. And I think that, you know, bringing awareness to how important knowing self is to even kids like this would significantly impact them, because then they're going to choose different, because they're going to choose based on what's true for them, not what the crowd around them or what the teacher or what their parents, anybody is telling them to do. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling anybody's kids to disobey, by all means. I mean, because I will, my kids know, you know. But still, having an understanding, having that middle place to meet, to be open to understand, well then what are you thinking? Where's your mind at? Because when you can sit down and understand a person, then you're open to hearing what their truth is. And sometimes they just need a little guidance because they don't even know who they are. So, all that to say, it's a perceived self. Most of us are just perceiving ourselves as somebody that is part of this work group or somebody that's part of this family, instead of as who you are as an individual. It is extremely important to know who you are, otherwise you fall victim to everything and everybody that is around you. Now, your ideal self, how you would like to be. How do you imagine yourself? Are you a good person? Are you a bad person? Because honestly, there's no good or bad, there's just what is. Again, you could be an empathic person, you could be a compassionate person, you could be a driven person, you can be, you know, but know that. Because what you know of yourself is what you're going to draw in. Everything is energy. So, you know, you can have displacement, repression, like all of these things, denial, comes from all of these situations of conditioning where we don't know who we are. So, again, it's so important to be present. I mean, the key to all of this, if you could just sum everything up, for me, it's being present. This is how you can learn and know the self more than anything. You can choose your modality. There's no wrong, there's no right way. But getting present, finding out what's true for you in the here, in the now, honoring your truth, and leaving what's in the past, because I say that, but let me rephrase that a little bit, because it's also important to understand what happened in the past, why it happened. Not to the point of detriment, but to the point of being open to understanding. Again, everything has its purpose. Nothing happens in life, even the bad, without purpose. Our souls, our higher self, God, universe,